Imagine lying on the cold ground, wide awake. Someone kneels over you, holding a sharpened stone. There is no anesthetic, no painkiller, nothing to make you sleep. And slowly, carefully, they begin to cut a hole straight through the bone of your living skull. You're certain this is a story about death, a torture, an execution, a brutal, doomed experiment by people who had no idea what they were doing. But you would be wrong, because when we dig up these skulls, thousands of years later, most of them tell the opposite story. The patient lived. This is trepanation, cutting a hole into a living human skull. And it is not some rare horror that happened once or twice. It is one of the oldest surgeries on Earth, performed thousands of times on every inhabited continent for at least 7,000 years. So today's question cuts straight to the bone. Why did ancient humans drill holes in their own skulls? Were they mad? Were they cruel? Or were these so-called primitive people doing something so advanced that we did not fully catch up to it until the modern age? To find out, we need a skull that proves the impossible, a Stone Age operation performed wide awake, a survival rate that shames modern doctors, and a reason for all of it that we are unbelievably still using today. Let's open the file. Start with the single most astonishing fact, the one that changes everything. We know for certain that huge numbers of these patients survived, and we know it because of a quiet miracle written into the bone itself. Bone is alive. When you cut it and the person dies, the edges of the hole stay sharp and raw forever. But if the person lives, the bone begins to heal. The rim of the hole slowly grows smooth, rounded, and thick as new bone creeps in to seal the wound. So when archaeologists find a skull with a hole ringed by smooth, regrown bone, they are looking at proof. Proof that this person had their head cut open with a stone tool and then got up and walked away and lived for months or years afterward. And these healed skulls are everywhere. And some skulls tell an even wilder story. They have not one healed hole, but 2, 3, even more, each one smoothed over with new bone. That means the same person survived the operation and then came back and let someone do it to them again and again. They trusted it that much. Take one famous example from Ensisheim in France. Archaeologists found the skull of a man who lived around 7,000 years ago. In his head were 2 separate surgical holes, and both of them had fully healed. This Stone Age man was operated on twice and lived on for a long time after each one. And here's a haunting detail. In some cultures, the small disc of bone cut from the skull was not thrown away. It was kept, polished, pierced, and worn on a cord around the neck as a protective amulet. A little piece of a survivor's own head, carried for luck and for power. So how on earth did you survive having your skull opened in the Stone Age? The tools were simple and terrifying. Sharpened flint, volcanic glass called obsidian, with an edge finer than a modern scalpel. Later, small saws and drills made of bronze. There were several methods, and each one avoided the deadly mistake of plunging straight through into the brain. Some healers scraped the bone away, layer by patient layer. Some carved a careful, circular groove, going deeper with every pass, until a neat disc of bone lifted free. Others drilled a ring of tiny holes in a circle, then gently cut the bridges between them, popping out a perfect round piece. The key, in every method, was patience. Stop at the bone. Never, ever push the blade into the soft brain beneath. Get that right, and the patient could live. There was no anesthetic as we know it, though some cultures likely used alcohol or numbing plants to take the edge off. Mostly, the patient was simply held still and had to endure it. The fact that so many survived the shock, the pain, and the risk of infection is nothing short of remarkable. Now, how common was this really? The answer is staggering. Trepan skulls have been dug up across Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Pacific. But the true world capital of skull surgery was ancient Peru in South America, where healers performed it for well over 1,000 years. In the Andes, the Inca and the cultures before them turned skull surgery into an art form. Archaeologists there have found hundreds upon hundreds of trepaned skulls, so many that we can actually track how the surgeons got better and better over the centuries. Which brings us to the real mystery. Why? Why would you ever choose to have a hole cut in your head? And here the answer splits into two, one rooted in the spirit world, and one rooted in something startlingly close to real medicine. The first reason was to let something out. In many cultures, a person with crippling headaches, seizures, or sudden madness was believed to be possessed. An evil spirit was trapped inside their skull. And the solution seemed obvious. Open a door in the bone and let the demon escape. To us, that sounds like pure superstition. And for headaches or epilepsy, it was. But here is the twist that makes trepanation so haunting. Sometimes cutting the hole genuinely, physically worked. Not because of any spirit, but because of simple, brutal biology. Think about a nasty blow to the head from a club, a fall, a fight. The skull can crack, and blood and fluid can build up inside, pressing harder and harder on the brain with nowhere to go. That rising pressure will kill you, unless someone opens a hole and lets it out. So a healer who drilled into a fractured skull to release the pressure was not just guessing. They were performing with a piece of flint the exact life-saving logic that a brain surgeon uses today. Relieve the pressure and save the life. They had stumbled onto real, hard medicine. And now for the number that should genuinely stun you. When researchers studied those hundreds of Peruvian skulls, they measured the survival rate. In the best periods, it reached as high as 80%. 8 out of 10 people survived having their skull cut open with stone tools and no modern medicine at all. To understand how insane that is, compare it to the American Civil War more than 2,000 years later. Surgeons there, with metal tools and formal training, lost around half of their head wound patients. The Stone Age healers of Peru were beating Civil War doctors by a wide margin. How? Because the ancient healers had quiet advantages we forget. Clean, simple wounds instead of dirty gunshot wounds. No crowded, infected field hospitals passing disease from patient to patient. And a technique refined and passed down carefully across 100 generations. And recovery was not the end of it. A patient with a hole in their skull had to be cared for, fed, and protected for weeks while the bone slowly sealed itself. That tells us something quietly beautiful. This was not one lone healer gambling with a life. It was a whole community choosing to keep a wounded person alive. And here is the detail that ties the whole story together. Trepanation never actually stopped. It is still done, right now, in every major hospital on Earth. We just gave a cleaner name. When a modern neurosurgeon drills a small opening in the skull to relieve pressure on a swollen or bleeding brain, it is called a craniotomy, or a burr hole. It is one of the most important emergency operations in the world. And it is the exact same idea a healer had with a piece of flint 7,000 years ago. So put the whole picture together. Why did ancient humans drill holes in their skulls? Not because they were savages. Not because they were mad, not to kill or to torture. They did it to heal, to chase away a pain they did not understand, and, astonishingly often, to relieve a deadly pressure they understood better than we ever gave them credit for. These were not primitive butchers. They were the first surgeons, and they were shockingly, brilliantly good at it. That small, round hole in an ancient skull is one of the most human things ever found. It is a person in agony and another person refusing to just watch them suffer. Reaching for a tool, taking an unthinkable risk, trying against all odds to save a life. 7,000 years later, a surgeon in a bright, clean room picks up a drill and does the very same thing. The tools have changed beyond recognition. The hope behind them has not changed at all. A hole in the skull is a line drawn straight from a Stone Age healer to a modern hospital. The oldest surgery we ever invented, and we never let it go. And tomorrow, we stay with the body and get even stranger. Ancient humans did not just cut holes in their heads. In many cultures, they deliberately file their healthy front teeth down into sharp, pointed fangs. Why did ancient humans sharpen their teeth into points? Subscribe and find out tomorrow.